I am Amelia, 35, and today I buried my husband, James, overseas. After 30 sleepless hours travelling home, I texted our family group chat. Flight lands at 5:00 p.m. Can someone pick me up? My brother Troy replied, We are busy. Try Uber. Mom added, Why did not you plan better? With trembling fingers, I typed, No worries, while silently collapsing inside. I had no idea that within hours my family would be watching my tragedy unfold on their evening news. Before I continue this story, let me know where you are watching from in the comments below. Hit like and subscribe if you have ever felt abandoned when you needed someone most. Before grief rewrote my entire existence, I had what most would call a picture-perfect life. James and I met during sophomore year of college. He spilled coffee on my economics textbook, insisted on buying me a new one, and somehow managed to turn that disaster into a dinner date. We married after graduation and built a beautiful life together in Portland. I worked as a marketing director, while James thrived as a software engineer. We had a cozy 2-story house with a garden I poured my heart into each spring. James always joked that my tomatoes could win state fair ribbons if I ever entered them. 10 years of marriage passed like a beautiful dream. We travelled whenever possible, had game nights with friends on Thursdays, and saved diligently for our future. James and I talked about starting a family soon. We had even converted the spare bedroom into a home office that could easily become a nursery when the time came. Everything changed last fall when James was offered a 6-month contract with an international tech company in Singapore. It was the opportunity of a lifetime, one that would advance his career tremendously and allow us to experience living abroad together. I arranged to work remotely for 3 months, planning to split our time between continents. We were so excited about the adventure ahead. The night before his departure, we had a special dinner at home. I still remember every detail. The soft music playing in the background, the flickering candles on our dining table, and the way James looked at me when he promised this opportunity would make our future even brighter. In 6 months will fly by, he assured me, his fingers intertwined with mine, and then we will start the next chapter. We video called every day for the first 2 months. I flew out to visit him for 3 weeks around the holidays, and it felt like a second honeymoon. Singapore was beautiful, vibrant, and exciting. James showed me around the city, introduced me to his co-workers, and we explored neighbouring islands on weekends. Everything seemed perfect. We even started seriously discussing trying for a baby when his contract ended. Then came the call that shattered my world. I was back in Portland when James complained about a severe headache during our morning video chat. Probably just stress, he said, massaging his temples. Big project deadline coming up. 8 hours later, his co-worker called from James's phone. My husband had collapsed during a meeting and been rushed to the hospital. I booked the first available flight, but by the time I arrived 26 hours later, James was already in a coma. Brain aneurysm, the doctors explained. They performed emergency surgery, but the damage was catastrophic. For 5 days, I sat by his hospital bed, holding his hand, talking to him, praying for a miracle that never came. James never regained consciousness. He was only 37 years old. The nightmare of dealing with a foreign hospital system alone was overwhelming. Every form was confusing. Every conversation stilted through translation apps or harried hospital interpreters. I called my family back home daily, desperate for emotional support, but our conversations were brief. "We are praying for you," they would say, before explaining why they needed to rush off the phone. My mother asked if I had thought to purchase travel insurance. My brother Troy suggested I hire a local service to handle things so I could come home sooner, but I could not leave James. Not like that. Not in a country where he knew no one but his co-workers. I stayed and handled everything myself. The paperwork for his death certificate took 3 full days and countless office visits. Arranging for a burial in Singapore, because the costs of transporting his body home were prohibitively expensive, required navigating unfamiliar customs and traditions. The funeral was small, some of his co-workers, a few expats he had befriended, and me. No family, no lifelong friends. My parents said the flight was too expensive on short notice. My brother had critical work obligations. I stood alone as they lowered my husband into the ground, a world away from everyone we loved. The financial strain was crushing. Our insurance covered some expenses, but international policies had limitations I never thought to examine before tragedy struck. I drained our savings and maxed out credit cards to pay for everything. Through it all, I kept updating my family, hoping someone would offer more than just brief condolences or practical suggestions. Looking back, I should not have been surprised by their response to my airport text. My family had always operated this way. When I graduated high school as valedictorian, my parents attended but left immediately after my speech to get my brother to his baseball game. At my college graduation, they arrived late and left early. Even at my wedding, my mother spent more time fussing over Troy, bringing the wrong girlfriend, than celebrating my marriage. I had spent my entire life accommodating their priorities, making excuses for their behavior, and telling myself that family just had different ways of showing love. Now, standing at my husband's grave on the other side of the world, I finally understood that some people simply do not have the capacity to put others first, even in moments of desperate need. After the funeral, a whole new nightmare began. The Singaporean bureaucracy required multiple certified copies of death certificates, each needing to be authenticated at different government offices spread across the city. I spent 3 days shuttling between buildings in the tropical heat, standing in endless lines and trying to explain my situation through grief-choked words. Each night, I collapsed in our rented apartment, surrounded by James's clothes that still smelled like him. On my final morning in Singapore, I visited James's grave one last time. The cemetery was peaceful at dawn birds singing in the lush trees overhead. I placed fresh flowers beside his simple headstone and sat on the dewy grass telling him everything I was bringing home his favourite books. The watch I had given him for our 5th anniversary, the collection of seashells we had gathered during our weekend trips to nearby beaches. "I will keep you alive in my heart," I whispered, pressing my palm against the cool marble. Every day for the rest of my life, my journey home stretched over 30 hours. First, a 6-hour delay in Singapore due to mechanical issues. Then, a missed connection in Tokyo, requiring an overnight stay in an airport hotel. The final leg included turbulence, so severe the flight attendants remained seated for 2 hours. By the time we began our descent into Portland, I had been travelling for more than a day straight, had barely eaten, and was running purely on grief and determination. During those endless travel hours, my mind kept returning to childhood memories, seeing patterns I had previously excused. When I was 8, I broke my arm falling from the backyard treehouse. My parents took me to the emergency room, but left me with a neighbour to wait while they took Troy to his championship soccer game. "He cannot miss this," my mother explained. The whole team is counting on him. When I earned a scholarship to my dream college, my father's first question was whether it would cost them anything. Troy had expensive sports camps that summer, he reminded me. College was my choice, so I should handle the finances. I worked 2 jobs between classes while Troy attended an out-of-state university fully funded by our parents. Indy 8. My wedding day featured my mother criticizing my dress as impractical and my father complaining about the cost of the modest venue. Troy showed up an hour late to the ceremony. James had noticed their behavior but gently encouraged me to focus on our happiness instead. We cannot change them, he said, but we can choose how much power they have over our joy. Throughout the funeral arrangements in Singapore, I had called home almost daily. Most calls went to voicemail. When someone did answer, conversations were brief and focused on when I would return rather than how I was coping. My mother suggested I was dwelling on my grief by staying for the funeral, rather than simply having James cremated immediately. Troy asked if James had life insurance before expressing concern about a work presentation he was struggling with. Despite this history, some irrational part of me believed that this tragedy, the absolute worst moment of my life, would finally elicit the compassion I had always craved from my family. Surely they would recognize the magnitude of my loss and respond with the support I desperately needed. 3 days before my final flight home, I messaged our family group chat with my itinerary details. The responses were minimal. Thumbs up emojis from both parents and Troy asking if I was bringing any souvenirs. I clarified my arrival time twice more before boarding my final flight, hoping someone would offer to meet me at the airport. No one did. But I made one last attempt as we touched down on American soil. My brothers, we are busy, try. Uber felt like a physical blow. My mother's, why did not you plan better? Made me question whether I had ever truly mattered to them at all. In that moment, sitting in a cramped airplane seat, surrounded by passengers eager